I'm Wilfried Cooreman, and I'm living in Puurs, which is a small village between Brussels and Antwerp. I'm married to Yannick, and we have 3 children, 2 grandchildren, and we're living here since 1972. Together with my wife, Yannick, which I just mentioned, we are collecting since more than 40 years. Well, we are living in a complete different world, and it's so important as well, of course, to at least have the possibility to talk to the artists, to enter into their world, which is different. I had a profession as an accountant, and it's quite strict. So strict in terms, of course, that you have a system, double accounting, which is in fact, which you can't change within 5,000 years from now. It's a system invented by an Italian monk, and it's a very rigid system. Of course, you have analytical accounting as well, but accounting as such is quite a rigid system. And my wife was teaching, and in fact there it is quite important as well, of course, to break out of your normal job and of course have something else in place. And that's art for us, is something which is meaning completely different to us. So it's or at least it's giving us another dimension in our life. And it's not just a possession, but it's at least trying to understand or read the work of an artist. In fact, there were, at the time when we started, and I'm talking now 74, 78, something like that, there were only 5 galleries which we considered as being galleries, of course, which were worthwhile visiting and doing something very special in times of art. But I'm talking now, of course, some years back. Now the world has changed completely, and I think that only in London there are probably thousands of galleries now. So, and at that time, of course, it was very restricted and very small, in fact, the world of collectors as well, because I still remember our first exhibition which we saw of Frans West, and that was in 89, something like that, and we were 5 people. 5 people, that means Frans West, my wife and myself, the gallerist and Peter Pakers. That was all. And of course, now it's a social event, an exhibition. So it was completely different and not comparable of what we have now. Well, the procedure of the purchase, we don't have in fact a procedure. We had an exhibition at Don Danels in 2009, and the title of the exhibition was When the Mood Strikes. I mean, normally when we are entering an exhibition or an art fair or whatever, of course, we are both going around and then of course looking at work, and then at the end of the visit we say, what did you see? So we have always something to talk about, and when we drive home then we have in fact probably making our decision or trying to determine exactly what we would like to have. But it's all depending, of course, and as I said, we started with people from our generation, artists like Kippenberger, like Frans West and Munoz and Mucha, German artists as well. And we always added young artists. We have always done that because, of course, then you don't spend a lot of money. And of course, it's not the economical value that we are interested in. It's just, of course, that we are interested in the artwork as such. Well, I can give you an example, of course, that economical value is now, of course, seen in terms of, an artwork has to have an economical value. But Nicholas Pope, we bought his work quite early as well, and then he was at Waddington. But we didn't buy the work at Waddington as such, but he was represented there, together with some other artists, of course, like even Picasso or Miro. You could buy that there. It was quite a gallery as such. But and Nicholas Pope was just between Richard Deacon, Tony Craig, basing his sculptures on the landscape, quite nice, and with equilibrium as well. Kruller Müller, a lot of museums have his work, but when he was 35, he went to Africa and he came back with a virus. So he doesn't work anymore. And if you mention now in the circle of collectors, we have a work of Nicholas Pope, then people say, Nicholas Pope, who the hell is Nicholas Pope? At least you have to have 5 diamonds and you have to have, well, whatever of course, but it has to represent economical value. I think that people are, you are a collector, you are considered as a collector when you have, dollars of course in your eyes. I think it's a bit negative probably, but sometimes it goes like that, in my opinion. Well, today of course it's you can't even compare prices anymore with at the time, of course, prices were quite high as well in terms, of course, of what you earned. But now it's 30,000, 50,000 just from the start. And people are just chasing, of course, as well for new art, and that's probably the reason why things are so expensive now. So, but it has to do with the rent, with all the fares, with everything of course, with the personnel. Some galleries are in fact employing 30, 50, 80 people, and they have a salary each and every month. So, I mean, someone has to pay for that as well, of course. And they are opening several dépendances just to have this kind of globalization or have the market as such. So that's making art now quite unreachable, even for people which we know and which earn a lot of money. But of course they have children, they have constructed a house, and then of course if you have to pay, or at least if you have to collect 5 works a year, it's quite some money. I think that there is going to be in fact Premier League in collecting, and then there is a second class as well. And the Premier League, that's for really the rich and the powerful, and it's a pity of course that some people, or at least can't afford anymore to have a nice collection in the future. Even for museums, it's going to be quite difficult. A collector in fact is someone who is taking a snapshot of his time. A museum has a completely different task in terms of course that they have to work for a very long time, but a collector as such, with the means he has only the possibility of course to take a snapshot, because you don't know of course if the collection of a collector is going to continue afterwards. That is something which you don't know. And for us as collectors of course it's a necessity to have at least, or at least I'm talking now for my wife and for myself, why we started collecting is to at least something which is for a necessity, a mental necessity. That's what collecting is for us. Just to live with it, and at the end of our life we want at least to have the idea we have lived. We have known so many artists, we have lived with their work, we try to read the work, reject it, take it back again, discussion, but mentally it's so important of course to have this. And then reading and dancing and theater, it's also important in your life, because we are here for only a few decades in fact. So that's we are collecting. Well, I think there is a profile in terms, of course, it's eclectic, but there is humor in the collection, there is music, there is literature, there is religion probably, philosophy, there is everything in life, in fact, which is normally a mirror of life, which is in the collection. And the reason, of course, why we are collecting then is probably connected to that, because not everything in life is just the same. Yeah? Each day is different, and that's quite important as well, of course. We are trying to make a solution for some work. We have a lot of work in Van Abbe Museum, in Musée Oostende, in Max Grandornu, in Museum Doldanus. So all the works are there, but we had another discussion with Charles Jesse from Van Abbe Museum. He didn't want to have anymore a work of Cristina Iglesias. And it was a big work, of course, which we can't put up because we are living here. And so most of the works are lended to museums or whatever. So, and then of course you have these difficulties, okay, yeah, what's going to happen with the work? Again, we talked to Christina and so on and so on. So we got some money, but not that it's sold on auction or whatever, you see? So that's something which we don't do, in fact. No, then you are too late. So you have to, we know, in fact, 95% of the artists, so they are all, in fact, friends, because we have another way of approaching them. They know that we don't have budgets which, I mean, yeah, can afford their work nowadays. But Thomas Schutte, for instance, he was making the birth invitation card for the birth of our grandchild, and it was an original aquarelle. And Juan Munoz made the birth announcement for our grandson, because we knew, and even now from Thomas Schutte, each and every New Year we are getting, in fact, a fantastic self-made New Year's card, but it's a print, in fact, which he's making especially for some friends. I think that museums are still doing that, but as you see that collectors are now, of course, trying to measure them, and there are more private museums, probably within 10 years from now, than public museums. And it has to do probably with wealth and showing exactly what you have. And there was a saying of Chris Dercon, who said, okay, finally all private collections will become public in the future. Because we are married, we have children, we have grandchildren, so the collection is going to the children, and then of course the grandchildren. And how will they react? We don't know. And that's not our problem. Our problem is, of course, that we want to live our complete life with our art. And that's what the children say as well, of course. It's your life. You have to take advantage of it. So that's quite important. But afterwards, of course, what's going to happen to a collection? It's very well possible that they are selling, or that at least museums are going to be interested. We don't know, but that it's going to be public later on. How do I see the future? I think, it's a pity, of course, that these smaller galleries are disappearing. But I think if you have a very good plan, and that you can work with your artists and have ideas, of course, how to go on, because there will always be, of course, these very big galleries who are just managing the whole art world. But on the other hand, of course, it's difficult that they can't be represented in a fair sometimes because of lack of money, of course. And of course, a fair has its importance now, really, because of course there you have on a very small surface, you have of course, 60, 160 galleries, whatever you have. So that's important to visit a fair. And of course they have to give the opportunity to the smaller galleries as well to participate in these, but if you have to participate and you have artists of course who are selling for 5,000, you can't afford 70,000 of course for a booth at Art Basel. But okay, and as a gallery then of course you have to have this kind of, I call it stable, because in a company it's just the same of course. You have to have youngsters, and I like to work with youngsters in fact because they came from university. And then you have the older, a pyramid in fact. And so you have to have that in your gallery as well. You have to have a Franz West. You have, or something of that caliber, that you can sell or survive on the work of course of an older artist just to support your youngsters and all that. So you have to have a plan. And of course a gallery is so important as well because these are the first who are supporting an artist and who are showing him, who are really giving him a platform and the opportunity to show his work. So secondary market is always easy of course. I can buy a work as well and then sell it and then it's finished. So but I hope that galleries as such are still able to survive, in fact, in the future. Yeah. But of course, as far as the fairs and all that is concerned, I think there are too much fairs as well. So, and you'll see that it's very commercial in terms that you had Art Basel, and then of course you had this 9/11. And Basel said, okay, the Americans are not coming to Basel, so we are going to conquer Miami. Okay. And then they said, okay, now Hong Kong. So these are the hubs, in fact, which they try to conquer. And then you have Friese, who is now looking for New York as well. And you have Art Cologne, who is looking for ABC Berlin. So everybody is, of course, trying to make his or her fair, globalizing and having all the collectors of course. So because these collectors from Russia, India and wherever they are going to all these fairs of course. And the smaller galleries, they can't afford that anymore.